Hey my beautiful bitches, it's me, Fiona St. James, and welcome to another episode of Fiona's Coffee Talks. And as always, I'd like to start off every day with a fresh, hot, black cup of coffee. Hold the cream! I'd love to. And of course, my coffee is busy right now with my new co-host, Shirley Squirrely. Who, girl, I thought I drank a lot of coffee, but this bitch, all she does is drink coffee all day. She's a little on the quiet side, but anywho, so today's episode is, drumroll please, another one of my documentary series, and it is specifically on Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City. Girl, I don't even know where to begin. Tales of the City started off in 1974, and it was actually a column that was written in a Marin County-based newspaper called the Pacific Sun. Then a couple of years later was picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle. And so Armistead, was an LGBT author, and he would, write this tale of these characters in San Francisco. And it became such a huge success that subsequently he actually wrote the novel. So it was a series that was considered like a serial novel but in a newspaper, and then they turned it into these actual novels. Tales of the City, more Tales of the City, further Tales of the City. The Tales of the City, the first one was published in 1978. Then there were a total of 6 between 1978 and 1989 that followed all of these characters. Excuse me. Who do I think I am? Wendy Williams? Anyway, I discovered these books. I knew of them, but I didn't read them the first time around till probably around 1990. You know how they say that like when you read a book versus like seeing a movie, like reading a book is so much better because it allows your imagination to really like envision and create the imagery yourself. I remember reading these books. I was working and I couldn't wait to like get home every night just to pick up the book. It was one of those kinds of books where you just couldn't put it down. And I read the 6 of them. There were 6 at the time, one right after the other, and I just completely fell in love with it. Beginning with the fact that there's an amazing cast of characters, beginning with the landlord of this building that she owned where they all lived, 28 Barbary Lane, Anna Madrigal, and she was this fierce pot-smoking bitch who Olympia Dukakis ended up playing the part. And of course, like all of the different tenants that lived there, they were sort of like her children. And so, and she would get them stoned all the time because, she was a heavy pot smoke and I think even grew it, and the tenants that lived there, Mona, who was bisexual, Marianne Singleton, who was like some girl from the Midwest who moves there, never having been there and suddenly, gets thrown into this world. And he had this really amazing talent for capturing what was going on. And because he was writing it, during current times, if anything current was happening in the world, that became part of it. So, you grew to love these characters, and I did anyway. And even like in Baby Cakes, which was the 4th book that came out in 1984, that was when we would, with the AIDS epidemic, was, lots of people were dying. And one of the main characters, Michael Tolliver, aka Mouse, his partner, who had been with him for a number of years, who was a doctor, at the beginning of book 4, you find out that he has died of AIDS. So, he really covered a lot of things. I don't want to give too much away in case, people haven't read it, but like even the landlord, Anna Madrigal, you find out that she's actually transsexual. So like he covered a lot of things that, were not really even spoken about, or what were not really out there in the forefront. So he was definitely very, very progressive for his time with everything that he covered, and, all of these different stories that he came up with. So those 6 came out between 78 and 89. Then he did 3 more that were part of that series that came out later on. I think the 7th one was like 2007. Then the other 2 were a few years later. Apart from that, he also wrote 2 separate novels that have nothing to do with Tales of the City. and then the 12th book were his memoirs. Armistead himself came from a very conservative upbringing. And, so the documentary covers all of that too. I mean, it predominantly covers, his major work, Tales of the City, but it also talks about his life. And, he had been working at a TV station. And at that time, Jesse Helm wasn't a U.S. Senator yet, but was the station manager. And because he was a conservative as well, there was one point where he held him in high regard as almost like a heroic figure. That obviously changed after the fact, and he even publicly said shit about him. So he definitely was also one that didn't keep his mouth shut, which I love him for that. I know in his personal life he had a lover for 12 years, but then they ended up breaking up. But he has subsequently been with his same partner, Christopher. They got married back in 2007. And actually his partner is a creator, owner of a dating site called Daddy Hunt. Girl, I love me some Daddy Hunt. Who don't love a daddy, right? This bottom boy does. So they've been happily married, since then. I was fortunate in 1994, Gay Pride Month in New York City. Everything was happening because it was Gay Games 4 was happening. We were the host city for that. It was also Stonewall 25. So I remember that month there were a whole lot of things going on. It was Gay Pride Month is always busy, but that particular year there were so many more events going on. And I was fortunate enough to have met him at the Intrepid party. So we chatted briefly, and I've just, I've always been such a fan of his. Like I said, I've read the books, the complete 6 of them, several times, probably 3-4 times. And then PBS in 1992, I believe it was, did the first movie, miniseries, Tales of the City. Then they did the following 2, further Tales of the City. No, Tales of the City, more Tales of the City, further Tales of the City. Which when you think about it, you gotta love PBS that, through sponsorship and people donating money, they were able to fund doing these amazing works because, they needed to be made into movies. They only did the first 3. They never did any more after that. So fast forward a few years ago, apart from the fact that this documentary came out, I think a year or 2 ago on Netflix. Netflix also did Tales of the City series, which Laura Linney produced. Laura Linney played Marianne Singleton. So I was fortunate enough that I was able to work on that set. And just as background, I shouldn't say just, but I was, background actor in that. And several days, the first scene was the scene where they're having a yard sale at 28 Barbary Lane. And I remember when they were posting the casting, they made it very clear that if you were going to work on the set, you had to be comfortable and okay around being around LGBT people. And I have to say that by and large, apart from the cast members, there were also a lot of the crew, were gay, trans. So if you suddenly had any issue with that, they were letting you know. Obviously I didn't. And it was just amazing. Just first of all, going on that set and seeing how they recreated 28 Barbary Lane. I remember walking on that set and getting emotional. Because I was oh my God. Oh shit, sorry. So, because it meant so much to me during the time. So I worked on that. We did that scene, and then later on we did. There was this huge sex scene where 2 characters end up getting married, and 2 gay male characters, and there's this whole leather S&M wedding. So there were a whole bunch of us in our leather shit, practically naked. And so, and in that particular scene, Armistead and his partner were there. So I got to chat with him again too. And the first scene that I was in, it was, I want to say it was wonderful, seeing the relationship of Laura Linney and Olympia Dukakis, working, because that was that big scene where Olympia gives this whole big speech where, she's like, why are you selling my stuff? Because I think like the character's mind, she's like starting to lose it a little because she's up there in the years. And I know that she had already retired from acting, so Olympia herself agreed to do this because it was Laura Linney, and I know they had such an amazing relationship. And so it was wonderful to like see her do that scene, that speech, and she was like literally like 10 feet away from me while she was doing it. And then, seeing Laura Linney go up to her, and just the whole experience was incredible. And the actor who played Michael for this Netflix series a couple of years ago was Murray Bartlett, who was also in that show Looking. He played Dom in Looking, and oh my God, he's Australian and hot as fuck and sweet as apple pie. So of course, you know me, I tend to be a little on the friendly side. So that first day that I worked, when we were doing that yard sale scene, they actually put me like at the table, and he was there. Ellen Page, who's now Elliot Page, she was there, and like, the other main actors were all there talking, and for whatever reason, the director was like, I want you there with them. So it was cute to be like in between shots when they were like, chit-chatting and goofing around and talking shit, they included me in that. So then suddenly there I was like, hanging out in between shots and like laughing and kidding around with these people. And then of course that was like when Murray and I started flirting shamelessly. So like, I ended up working maybe like 6, 7, probably more like 8 days on that. So every time I would see him, of course, we would like chit chat and catch and catch up. Lord, I can't even talk, and all that good shit. Anyway, so it was an amazing experience. And for me, it meant the world to me because the books mean everything to me. I've read them a ton of times. I've seen the DVDs that I own as well repeatedly. San Francisco has and will always be one of my favorite cities. I have always said that if I were to ever live anywhere other than New York City, it would have to be San Francisco. Honey, they say I left my heart in San Francisco. I left my heart, my whole, I left it all there because I've been there so many times. Castle Street Fair, Folsom Street, and there's just something about that city that to me has always been magical. I've always said it's like the New York City of the West Coast. So wonderful that he actually was able to do this and capture it in such a way, and especially during those times. So, all right. Anyway, watch the documentary, read the books. This book here is actually, apart from the 9 that were the series, they were released individually, but then they were also released in a compilation. So this is actually, books 4 through 6. And the other one, which I didn't have room to put here, and I meant to have near me to show you, but forgot to do it. It's somewhere over there, and I ain't getting up. That covers books 1 through 3. That one is called 28 Barbary Lane. This one, Back to Barbary Lane. So read them, see the movies, see the Netflix series, watch the documentary, Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City on Netflix. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here with me. As always, doing these videos brighten up my week. Oh, speaking of which, this video, which airs on this Friday, May 14th, which is when hopefully you'll be watching it, because this is summertime and I've kind of been like getting busy, and like my parents rely on me a lot. It's been a little overwhelming for me at certain times to frankly do them every week. So I think what I'm going to do for the next few months for the summertime is I might scale it back and just do every other week. So after this, the next one won't be till 2 weeks. There's going to be moments where like I will do back-to-back ones because there'll be a special thing like, 4th of July or like Labor Day. And then come the fall, then I'll go back to my regular schedule. But it will always be Friday at 10 a.m. But if ever there's a Friday that you don't see it, that's the off week, which for now, I think that's what I'm going to do. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Love you. Bye.